Hello everyone, welcome to another webinar from Data Platform Geeks. Today we are going to discuss about when things go wrong, error handling in SQL Server, and our today's speaker is Erland Sommarskog. We thank Erland for taking out his time and delivering this wonderful session for the Data Platform Geeks community. He's a very senior person out in our Data Platform community. And my name is Satya Ramesh, and I will be the host for you for next few minutes. And Mamita Sinha and Aarti Nambiar are helping me with moderation. Before we move forward, a quick introduction about who we are and what we do. We have three communities: SQL Server Geeks, under which we do a lot of free events, webinars, free videos, blogs, etc. on SQL Server related technologies. And you can go and visit all of our work under sqlservergeeks.com. And we also have Data Platform Geeks community, under which we do a lot of content, free in-person events, webinars, etc. on Azure SQL, Azure SQL DB managed instance, advanced analytics like Power BI, machine learning, artificial intelligence, etc. And yes, including SQL Server also. And we also have this annual Data Platform Summit, which we do in the month of August generally, but we for the year 2020, we'll announce the date soon. So what is this Data Platform Summit? Data Platform Summit, the first edition of Data Platform Summit was named as SQL Server Geeks Annual Summit, and it happened in the year 2015. And from that time onwards, every year we are doing this summit. And you can see all the 5 years themes there on the picture there. And the main mission of Data Platform Summit is to empower people in data and AI related technologies. So we call it as empowering data and AI transformation. And the dates for the Data Platform Summit 2020 are still in discussions. As you know, because of this COVID outbreak, we are still not decided the dates. Once the issue is settled down, then we can announce the dates of Data Platform Summit 2020. Here is a quick picture of Data Platform Summit 2019. You can see the very good picture. We cherish this picture a lot. And this picture was taken in the month of August as part of Data Platform Summit 2019, wherein close to 1,000 people attended this summit from 300 different companies who traveled down from 16 different countries. The main advantage of this session is that Microsoft product people from Redmond, they directly travel down to Bangalore and they deliver sessions live. So that is the main takeaway from this particular summit. If you're working with data, AI, and artificial related, advanced analytics related technologies, then this summit is a must attend for you. And this is the only summit in Asia where Microsoft people from Redmond who travel down to the Bangalore and deliver sessions in person. If you wish to learn more about Data Platform Summit, you can visit dps10.com, or else you can simply contact using our email contact@dps10.com. Here's a quick picture of DPG core team. You can find Amit Bansal, founder and president of Data Platform Geeks, and Manohar Punna, who is a vice president, and other core members and regional mentors of Data Platform Geeks who are helping us to organize all these free in-person events and webinars. We thank all of them for their time. And special thanks to Microsoft for supporting us in our community initiatives. And our today's knowledge partner is SQL Maestros. SQL Maestros has come up with video courses and hands-on labs, and right now they are offering a lot of discounts also. I'll talk about all those things a little later, but if you are interested in video courses related to SQL Server performance tuning, T-SQL querying and programming, you can visit sqlmaestros.com. Anyway, I'm going to talk about all those video courses at the end of the webinar again. Yes, you're already a member of Data Platform Geeks. Remain as a member so that you'll get updates to all our upcoming events, and you can also access our free videos, labs. Once in a while, we do put up hands-on labs for free so that you can access them also. And if you have joined today's webinar using direct joining link, go and register with Data Platform Geeks so that you can get access to all our resources. Just after the webinar, we are going to send an email with all the webinar resources and webinar recording also. And Data Platform Geeks registration is free. You just need to register one time. Once you register, you just need to do one click to attend an event. You just need to log in and go to respective event and click to attend. With one click, you will be able to register for that particular event. So we are coming up with a lot of other webinars and virtual symposiums also. I'll talk about all those things at the end of the webinar again. But if you're a member, take advantage of all the free stuff that we are doing. And don't forget to whitelist dataplatformgeeks.com domain and add events at dataplatformgeeks.com to your address book so that you don't miss out on any of our updates. And if you may have social presence in LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, in mobile like Telegram, etc. So we do have presence in all the social channels. We have put up a list in this particular web page. You can access that web page using this bit.ly link, bit.ly/dpg social. So if you go to that particular web page, you are going to see a full list of our LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Telegram channels. You can join any channel as per your convenience so that you'll get updated with our upcoming events and all the other things that we do. A small request from you. So in these tough times, we try to put up more free events like these webinars and virtual symposiums, etc., as we cannot do in-person events, and we request your help so that all the people, our free events can reach more people in the world. So we request to take this particular message, which is already there in chat window. You can see this message in chat window. Just copy paste this one in your Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, wherever you have social presence, so that it will help more other people to join Data Platform Geeks community and learn for free all the technologies that we are presenting. So the message is there in chat window again. Please take that and put up in your social channels. And yes, we do record all our webinars and we put up them in youtube.com/SQL Server Geeks YouTube channel. You can just go click on that link. The link is available in chat window. You can just click and go and subscribe so that whenever we update a video, upload a video, you'll get a notification. And we also have another YouTube channel called youtube.com/SQL Maestros, under which we do put up a lot of free videos on SQL Server internals, performance tuning, T-SQL querying and programming. All are available for free. And if you have a presence in Telegram, recently all the community people have presence in Telegram. So you just click on those channels and you will be able to join those groups so that you can ask your questions related to SQL Server and data platform related technologies. Yes, without any further delay, let's go to the speaker. Erland, over to you.
Yes, so could you stop sharing the screen? So yep, good, thank you. So, are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Then I can start then. And you hear my voice, apparently. So, okay, welcome. Or I should say I'm welcome, well, whatever. So, to this presentation entitled, When Things Go Wrong, Error Handling in SQL Server. Oh, let's see here. So a little bit about myself. My name is Erland Sommarskog. I live in Stockholm, up in Sweden, where I work as an independent consultant. I've been an MVP for many years for SQL Server, and I have this website, Sommarskog.sc, which you can say is a small collection of large articles. And the largest article of them all is entitled Error and Transaction Handling in SQL Server. As a matter of fact, it's so large, it's 250 pages split up over 3 parts and 3 appendixes. Now you say to yourself, wait a minute, 250 pages about something as trivial as error handling. This guy must be crazy. No, I am not crazy. You will find out during this presentation what is crazy. And that's why it has to be that long. So this presentation is some sort of, condensed version of that article. There is also my email address. If there is some question you did, that arrives to you after the Q&A session is over, yes, please feel free to contact me, sql@sommarskog.sc. I'd like to point out that slides and script, they are available at my website, sommarskog.se/present, and also on the Data Platform Geek site at I don't know exactly where, but I hope the people there will help you. So if you miss something or you want to check out things, you can do that later. So this is the agenda for today. My focus will be on handling unexpected errors. Sometimes you might do something, this could go wrong, something could happen, but then I do have a plan B. That's unexpected errors, but time does not permit me to cover that, because if you don't know how to handle unexpected errors, then you can't handle the expected ones. So this is the basics. So I would start looking at, if there is an error in your code, what action will SQL Server take? Then we will look at how is that modified if we turn out the setting exactly abort on. Then I will make a quick break to talk about more general, how should our code react to an unexpected error? Before I go on to look at how try-catch works in SQL Server, And then I will give you a recipe to how to write catch blocks and why they should look that way. I will talk a little bit about client-side error handling. And the last thing I will cover is to handle nested procedures and transactions, or maybe how not to handle them. So SQL Server is running your code and finds out, oh, no, not again. This guy just can't program. He's done an error again. So SQL Server has to raise an error. And now is the question, what happens next? So I'm going to explore this by doing a demo. So I got a script here. And the first thing I like to point out, since I know that from experience, most people probably know what this go means, but I see sometimes people don't really get this. So go is not an SQL statement. Go is an instruction to Management Studio. So when I press execute and submit the entire script, Management Studio sends this part, waits for response from SQL Server, then it sends the next part up to the next go, waits for response, etc. And this is important to understand what's happening later on. So in this script, I first start setting no count on, which is just to avoid these one rows affected messages. I drop my test table in case it already exists. And then I create my test table, which, well, it's very simple. It's got an ID column and a date column, which both are not null. And there's also an XML column that I use in one place, which is nullable. And there's a primary key. Then I got an inner procedure, and first it says starting. Then I do begin transaction. And then I insert one row to the test table, and that's a perfectly normal insert statement because there is an ID, there is a date, and the XML column is null, so it doesn't matter. Then there is another insert statement, which is not so good. It tries to insert 3 rows. We can tell this is going to fail because it tries to insert null here for row 13. And the date code does not permit null, so this will fail. And then there is another insert statement, which also is perfectly normal. Then there is a commit transaction, and it prints inResp completed. Then I also have an outer procedure, and what it does is to say that outResp starting, it runs inResp, and then runs the outResp. Oh, sorry, prints that it has completed. And then I actually go and run the outResp. That's what I actually do. And the final batch inspects, are there any rows in the test table? And if there is, checks if there are on the rows in the table, and then it checks if there is an active transaction. And if it is, it calls out, after the test, there is an active transaction, and rolls it back. And if there is not, it will silent it says, no transaction is active after the test. So I will submit this now, and in one go. But before I do that, try to think of how many rows you expect that to be in the table after this test is completed. And remember, something's going to go wrong with this row. But how many rows will it be? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So kind of a hint is that transactions are supposed to be atomic. So from that perspective, we might expect 0. But look what happens. There are 2 rows in the table. So transactions are not really atomic in SQL Server. But let's look from the beginning. It says outResp starting, inResp starting, and then we get this, message 515, cannot insert the value null into column date call, etc. The statement has been terminated. InResp completed, outResp completed, and the 2 rows in the table, 11 and 15. So what happened? Well, transactions in SQL Server are not always atomic. That is, they should be all or nothing. No, they're not. But statements are atomic. So this statement fails entirely. It's not that SQL Server inserts 12 and 14 and only skips this one. No, if you try to insert 1 million rows in a single statement and one single row violates constraint or null or something is wrong, the entire statement is going to fail. But then SQL Server says, yeah, but you know, everyone can have a bad day. I don't want to ruin the show, so I will keep on running and execute and continue. So that's why this row is executed and the statement the transaction is committed. Well, now let's see if I change this. So now it's still wrong, but now it's just a different error, bad date. So it looks like, well, a similar kind of severity, we would expect this to have the same result. But no, starting, conversion failed, and nothing but completed, and no rows in the table. So this time SQL Server says, oh, this is a very serious error. No. We can't go on. We must abort the batch, stop executing, and roll back the transaction. Despite the errors might seem similar. So here's another thing we can try. We rename the table and try to insert into no such table. And look what happens now. Well, starting, message 208, invalid object name, no such table. A message 266 transaction count after the execute indicates a mismatching number of begin and commit statements. Previous count 0, current count 1. Outer SB completed. And again, message 266. And one row in the table. And after the test, there is an active transaction. So what happened this time? Well, SQL Server arrived at this statement and said, oh, what a bad procedure. It refers to a table that does not exist. I don't like this procedure. I don't want to run this procedure anymore. So it stops running the procedure. But then it says, I don't want to ruin the show. Everyone can have a bad day. So it continues executing here in the caller. And the caller is not aware of that this procedure started a transaction. So the transaction remains open. And guess now, imagine that this happens in real life. So the user that runs into this, oh, that was an error. Okay, I'll try something else. And the user goes on, he's happy, he can make updates and add data, and he can see that updates are there, everything's fine. His office mates are getting more and more crazy because as this guy goes on with this open transaction, he acquires more and more locks, and the other guys get blocked, but he is happy. Until the end of the day, he closes his laptop, he comes home, and then for some reason he's going to open them up and check something and finds out, what? All my data entered today is gone. Because now that when he closed the laptop, the transaction was rolled back. So this is known as an orphan transactions, and they're really, really nasty. And then there is the question I've always been asking myself: what were they smoking the day they come up with this design? I probably don't want to know. So anyway, let's see, we have more things to explore. We have the semicolon throw statements that permits us to raise a user-defined error. So I run this one. Starting, I'm throwing an error, one row in the table, and after the test, there is an active transaction. So this statement, just like the bad date, aborted the batch, no completed. But this time, the transaction was left open. There is some variation here. Then we have raise error. The raise error does actually the same thing as throw. It permits us to raise a user-defined error, just different syntax, and it's older. So we could expect that it behaves the same. But no, starting, I'm raising an error, completed, and 4 rows in the table. Now the 4 rows is nothing remarkable because I have commented out both the bad rows. So raise error, raise error execution continues. And then I got this update statement here. You don't see all of it, but you will have to believe me that from a user perspective, there is absolutely nothing wrong. This statement is actually perfectly okay. But although when I run it, though, there is, starting. Description should never happen. Message 3624, a system assertion check has failed. Check the SQL Server error log for details. And then this message goes on for a very long part to the right. Message 596 cannot continue the execution because the session is in the kill state. Message 0, a severe error occurred on the current command. The results, if any, should be discarded. What you have seen here is a bug in SQL Server. They have a so-called assertion check in their code. So they think, if we arrive in this piece of the code, we have done something wrong. So they think, we no longer know what's going on. So they're doing the only right thing. They cut the connection. So when you see a message with level 20, this means that your connection has been cut. And well, that's the gist of the message. Exactly this is an assertion check. And this is a generic message telling you that the execution has been aborted. And this message 0 here, this is not a message from SQL Server. I believe the lowest error message that SQL Server actually can produce is 21. This is actually a message from Management Studio informing you exactly about this, that the connection has been cut. And sometimes when these things happen because of timings, this might be the only message you see. I should also point out that sometimes the level might be 11. In that case, the connection has not been cut. In that case, the internal error was on the in Management Studio or in the client API, which could be due to that SQL Server is sending bad stuff on the protocol. So let's see. We have one more thing to look at here. We have the I gotta wait for statement here. So I gotta wait for 1 minute. And you might think that I'm gonna just talk for 1 minute. Let's see if I have to do that. No, I get message -2, execution timeout expired. The timeout elapsed prior to the completion of the operation, or the server is not responding. Wait a minute, I asked it waited for 1 minute, so why does it time out after 5 seconds? And there's one row in the table, and after the test, there is an active transaction. Well, again, -2, so this is not an error from SQL Server. is, again, it's a message from Management Studio. This happens because in my query options, I have done this. I have set an execution timeout to 5 seconds. Now, that's quite an odd thing to do. Normally, Management Studio waits forever. However, if you write an application in some language, in some environment, the major part of client APIs that are out there have a default timeout of 30 seconds, which in my opinion is a hole in the head, but that's another discussion. So, and what happens then after 30 seconds, if the query is not completed, the client API raises this error. So this API comes from Management Studio. Now I set it to 5 seconds. And many people who see this error thinks that it is SQL Server that times that, but it is the client API. But what the client API does in this situation, it sends a so-called attention signal to SQL Server, which means stop doing what you're doing. I'm tired of waiting for you. And SQL Server will roll back the current statement, but it will leave the transaction open. Now, there's one more way you can produce this attention signal in Management Studio. So I press execute, and I press this red button. Query is canceled by user. And you can see now, if I run this, again, there is this active transaction. Quite nasty guy, if you ask me. And it's the same thing. This was a human timeout. So we have now completed the first round of this exploration trip, but we're going to do it a second round. So I'm going to restore the null error, and I'm going to go up here and activate this command, set exactly board on, which changes the rules. So now I'm going to run this again. And now you see starting, cannot insert the value null, and no rows in the table and no active transaction. You might recall last time we had 2 rows in the table. Because now when exactly board is on, this means that this error now aborts the batch and rolls back the transaction. And, well, we can take the bad date. The behavior is the same as before. We can try the no such table. And the same thing happens here. The batch is aborted and the transaction rolled back, and we get no orphan transaction. So we get a more consistent error behavior here. Let's see. And semicolon throw. Try this guy. Again, we get the same behavior. Now the transaction is also rolled back. No orphan transaction. And then we can try raise error. And just when we thought we were safe, no, raise error ignores exactly board on. Starting, and raising an error, completed, 4 rows in the table. So I'm going to skip the update statement because it's still going to behave the same, but the wait for is interesting. When I do this, now when exactly board is on, SQL Server will also roll back any open transaction if there is an attention signal. So exactly board on matters here. So the gist is here that exactly board on makes things more consistent and a little more safer, at least from some perspectives. So I will go back to the slides and now try to summarize what we have seen. So what actions can SQL Server take by default when exactly board is off? Well, the most severe action it can take is to close the connection. The next, almost equally severe, is to abort the batch and roll back the transaction. It can abort the batch without rolling back. It can abort the current scope and continue in the caller. Or it can just roll back the current statement and continue on the next one. Now you may ask, so when does SQL Server take which action? Is there really a pattern here? Well, this one is quite simple. These are always internal errors in SQL Server. Well, with one exception. You can do raise error with level 20 to commit suicide, but that's about it. No user errors will have this result. Well, possibly if there is, you come up with some really stupid, silly thing, and SQL Server has not foreseen it and then goes out to some forays and crashes, but that's still a bug in SQL Server. This group, number 4, aborting the scope and continuing the caller, is actually quite well defined. This is always compilation errors at runtime. Now, this sounds a little funny. How can there be compilation errors at runtime? But SQL Server has this feature, or miss feature, I like to call it because I don't like it, deferred name resolution, which means that when you create a procedure and it refers to a non-existing table, SQL Server does not say anything about it at that time. It doesn't. And also, when you start the procedure and compiles a plan, still stay silent. It's not until it reaches the statement and this happens. Well, the rationale for this is temp table, because, well, the temp table you define in a procedure does technically not exist at that time. So then things can go well. But then it could also fail because you join the temp table with another permanent table, and you have misspelled the column name in that table, which is not detected until you come to that statement. Anyway, these compilation errors at runtime always have the effect that the current procedure or function, whatever it is aborted, and execution continues on the next statement in the caller. Then we have group number 3. This is also fairly, well, it's a fairly small group because it was introduced in SQL 2012 with the semicolon throw statement. There are some errors around the new feature execute with result sets that also has this behavior. And then we had some stuff around hackathon in SQL 2014. They also used this behavior. And then I have not noticed any new errors introduced in later versions, but I've not checked vigorously. And then we have these two groups, aborting the batch and rolling back the transaction, and roll back the statement and continue on the next. Well, there are some errors like deadlocks, running out of disk space, etc. They are in group 2, which you could expect. But apart from that, it is basically just willy-nilly. It's like they have been rolling a dice every time. Okay, we had a new error here. So is this one going to behave? 1, 2, 3, it's going to abort the batch. 4, 5, 6, it's going to roll back the statement. It's very difficult to find a consistency. There are even errors that, depending on set options, either other set options than exec abort off or on. That also changes the behavior. It's a complete mess. That's the short summary. Now, the good news is if you turn on exec abort on, things get a little easier because now the groups 3, 4, and 5 disappears. We still have the errors that close the connection because they are not ours. But then we have aborting the batch and roll back the transaction. Unfortunately, we have this group that ignore exec abort on. It's a fairly small group. The race error statement is one of them. This error 266, tran count mismatch, is also one of them. One group which is good to be aware of is syntax errors. This matters if you do dynamic SQL. So if you do dynamic SQL and there is a syntax error, that error is never going to abort the batch as such. There are a few more errors, but they're not extremely significant. So, yeah, and also attention signals, just to repeat this, they tell SQL Server to abandon execution, and they occurs with the client-side error, timeout expired, and also if you press the red button in Management Studio. The statement is always rolled back, but the transaction is only rolled back if exec abort is on. So let's now discuss a little more how we should handle unexpected errors in our code before we go and explore more things in SQL Server. So the first thing is this. If an unexpected error occurs, we must display an error message to the user. The user must be informed that things have gone wrong. The user must not see a partial or incomplete result and thinking something like, oh, our business is doing great. We can expand. We can do acquisitions. And as a matter of fact, they should rather be on the low side. And now they do acquisitions and the company goes bust because he just has too much. And as a consequence, you lose your job. So that's a thing to keep in mind. If the user sees incorrect results, that can have really serious impacts. And also, but you may not want to display the message from SQL Server as such, because that message will be gibberish to the user. That's all right. Display a generic message to the user. An unexpected error happened. Please contact the administrator. But just make sure that you log the message somewhere so you can find it. Because if you don't have the original error message, troubleshooting is going to be very, very, very hard. And of course, also, you should roll back any open transaction in case of an error so that you prevent incorrect or incomplete data from being persisted. Very, very important. That could, of course, also leads to incorrect decisions. And to avoid orphan transactions, which are just nasty. I'm saying this because I've been through those, and it was, well, horrible. And you should also abort execution. You have lost control, so you cannot continue. Just like they did in SQL Server with that assertion error. They cut the connection. You don't know what you're doing anymore, so don't try to continue executing. And keep this in mind, with exec abort off, the default, there is no guarantee that execution will be aborted on error. Execution may well continue. So therefore, I recommend you to always have this statement on the top of your procedure. Set exec abort, no count on. Now, no count here has nothing to do with error handling, but it is generally considered best practice to have on anyway. And then I do this as a single statement so that it gets less non-intrusive into your code. Or less intrusive to your code, I should say. Now, with this setting, execution is aborted for most errors. And if you're doing something like a simple script that you're monitoring manually, it can be enough, it can be sufficient. But for application code, nah, that could still be things you want to make sure that the execution really is aborted. And to that end, we need try catch, which we're going to look at in just an instant. But before that, I'd like to give you a little tip. In Management Studio, you can go in on the Tools Options, Query Executions, SQL Server, Advanced. And here you can check. This is not checked by default, but you can go in here and say, I want exec abort on to be turned on always when I open a new query window. And this has the big advantage if you're doing things and you're running something and something goes wrong and the execution is aborted, but maybe the transaction is left open, or maybe you press that red button. And it can lead to quite a bit of confusion if you leave transactions open. Even worse if you do it in production and you might block other users. So this is some sort of a safety net. Okay, so try catch. This is a concept that exists in many languages. You do a try block, and if there is an error in the try block, execution is transferred to the catch block. Let's look how that works in SQL Server. So this is a similar script to the one before, but my in-recipe now has begin try, and it says starting, begin transaction. It's the same insert statement here, commit transaction, and at the catch block, well, it says in-recipe raised error, and it does commit transaction. Now, I like to point out, doing commit transaction in the catch block is a very, very odd thing to do, but I'm doing this to explore what's happening. But normally you wouldn't do this. And then it says in-recipe exiting catch handler. This time I'm running the in-recipe and I'm also printing after in-recipe. But I also still have my out-recipe with the same setup, starting running in-recipe, completed without incidents, and here my catch block, out-recipe raised error, the text of the error message, commit transaction exiting catch handler. And all, because I'm going to do that in one place. I'm going to run that this way. Okay. And here's the final, the same batch as before. So I'm going to run this for the not null error. And you see here, starting raised error, cannot insert the value null into column, date column, temp, blah, 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 etc. Exiting catch handler after in-recipe, and there's one row in the table. Now, given the fact that we inserted one row, we got an error, moved to the catch block where we did commit transaction, that is nothing strange. Let's now try the bad date. And now we got a whole bunch of error message here. Starting raised error, conversion failure, converting date and or time, blah, blah, blah. Message 3930, the current transaction cannot be committed and cannot support operations that write to the log file, roll back the transaction. Exiting catch handler, transaction count mismatch again. After in-recipe on message 3998, uncommittable transaction is detected at the end of the batch. The transaction is rolled back. So what happened this time? Well, this time, because this is an error that, when not being caught, rolls back the transaction is, as the term they use, is doomed. And the meaning of that is exactly this. You cannot commit to this transaction, nor can you continue doing things inside this transaction. You must roll it back. So that's what this error message says. And then you could think that because that's the important part of that message, well, they could just abort the batch and roll back the transaction. But apparently this time they got a 4 or 6 on the dice when they roll it. So it just continues on the next statement. So eventually, though, when we exit the batch, SQL Server detects that, wait a minute, there is a doomed transaction here. What's the point of keeping this one? No, I will roll it back after all. Oh, well, let's see here. We could try more things. Let's try semicolon throw. And this time, I'm throwing an error, exiting catch handler, one row in the table. Because although this statement aborts the batch, it does not roll back the transaction, we could commit. The transaction was not doomed. And raise error. Yep, the same behavior. So that's sort of interesting. Let's see this internal error. Can we catch this one? No, we cannot. The behavior was the same as before. And this makes sense. Again, they have lost control, so they should not permit us to continue in any form. We should just be thrown out. And what do I wait for? Can we catch this timeout error? Let's see. No, we could not. We got the same behavior as before. Oh, there's error, one row in the table, and there's an open transaction. Now, but this is not very strange, because this error occurs in Management Studio. It does not occur in SQL Server. So, of course, we cannot catch that error. And also, we cannot catch that attention signal by any form. So, oh, wait a minute. I forgot the no such table. Yeah, let's look at that one. So the no such table. Let's look at that one. Starting invalid object name no such table, message 266, one row in the table. and active transaction, but no sign of the catch handler. So is this an error we cannot catch? Well, actually we can catch this error, but not in inner-SP though. So I'm going to go down and run the outer-SP instead. And now you see, starting, invalid object name, no such table, raised in outer SP. So these compilation errors at runtime, you cannot catch them in the scope they occur. Why? Well, I've seen bug reports of this. One they just closed with don't fix, and I think I submitted one myself, and they just said by design. And please don't ask me about that design. I think they should be caught. This is just, no, wait a minute, that was the wrong one. This is the one I should keep. This is just one of these irritating things in SQL Server with error handling. Why? Okay, let's say if the compilation error occurs when I'm starting the procedure, I have not entered the catch block. That's all right, but I have entered the catch block. It is a fact runtime error. But no. Oh well, so let's see. Let's activate extract abort on and see how that changes the rules. And now we have the not null error. You might see this, the not null, and we get starting, and now the current transaction cannot be committed, it cannot, etc. No rows in the table. So now when extract abort on, the not null will roll back the transaction, and therefore the transaction is doomed. So I'm going to, well, the bad date is going to behave the same. So I'm going to skip that one. I'm going to move to semicolon throw. And again, the transaction is doomed. So the because now the transaction is rolled back, so the transaction is doomed. Okay, but then raise error. We might think then that raise error ignores extract abort on. So we might expect no. It turns out if extract abort is on, the transaction is always doomed. That is just the way it works. And yeah, the if I try this one, nothing changes. It's still not caught here, but it's caught in the outer procedure. If I do that one, I can do this. Oops. Oh, sorry. Lost track of my keyboard. So, and we're going to run the outer SP. And as you can see, the transaction is doomed, but it's caught, but it's a doomed transaction. So now let's summarize what we have seen so far. So if you come to the cache block, the transaction may be doomed and must be rolled back. And errors that roll back the transaction, well, those are dooming errors. Errors that roll back the transaction if not being caught. And of course, if you take deadlock resource errors, it's perfectly reasonable that the transaction is doomed because there's absolutely no point in continuing. You should really be able to abort. But if you take a conversion error, maybe you would like to do something else. Maybe you log that to an error table, but just move on. But nope, you can't do that. That is just the way it works. And if you have extract abort on, transaction is always doomed. And yep, that you cannot catch all errors. You cannot catch these internal errors that close the connection. But as I said, that's all right. You cannot catch compilation errors in the scope they occur, but you can catch them in outer scopes. Then I didn't show you this, but there are various odd errors you cannot catch. More common with sort of, how should I put this? Well, marginal or outside extra features like linked servers, the CNR, full text. In the part 2 of my series, I have a list of some of these that I've seen. And well, they sort of make you a little nervous. Thankfully, they're not that very many. But if you work with linked servers, etc., it can be quite nervous because you can't really handle all errors very well. And you cannot catch attention signals. Now, let's discuss how we should use try-catch. And I'm telling you this. You should have try-catch in all your stub procedures. Or, well, I put it almost in parentheses because, well, there are occasional ones. Maybe you have a sub-procedure. It's a procedure which is strictly a sub-procedure to another procedure because you're calling it multiple times. Then you might say, okay, I'm not going to do try-catch to this one. I do that in the main procedure. But those cases are very, very rare. Or there is something special. We will see one later on that does not have a try-catch for obvious reasons when we see it. And keep this in mind, the try block is the main meat of your procedure. This is where you have your business logic. So this one, of course, that's the important thing. And the catch block, well, it's almost the same, well, in every procedure. And again, almost the same, because it's always doing the same thing. The one with almost here is that you might need to do some extra cleanup. For example, if you have taken an application lock on session level, you will need in the catch block to make sure that you release it. But those cases are also not very common. I cannot cover them in this session. Now, since the catch block is always there in the same procedure, it must be short and non-intrusive. I've seen people posting code on the forums where the catch block has been almost longer than the try block, and that makes no sense at all. Because again, it should be the same everywhere. So it could almost be a macro. So you need 2 lines. That's all you need, 2 lines. One to roll back any open transaction and one to re-raise the error. And why do you need these lines? Well, first of all, why do you need to roll back any open transaction? Well, we have already discussed this to make sure that you don't persist incorrect data, that something has gone wrong. So please clean up, make sure that everything nothing's being left behind, and to avoid these nasty orphan transactions. And we need to re-raise the error. So, because an unexpected error, remember this, I'm talking about unexpected errors. If you're doing something, I know that this could go wrong, and I will ignore it. That's all right, because you know exactly what error you're looking for. But an unexpected error must never be dropped on the floor because something you did not foresee happened. So always pass the bucket to the next guy on the call stack by re-raising the error, and eventually it should be displayed to the user or logged to some table if it's some sort of a batch operation. So how do we do this technically? Well, this statement should always be your catch block. If at a try count greater than 0, roll back transaction. This line should always be there. Sorry, I have to take some water. You may not have begin transaction today in your code. You may think, well, I don't need this. Yeah, but you may not have that today. But that could change tomorrow or 2 years later. If some other guy comes in, because by then you have left the company, and go and changes your code and add a transaction, will that person remember to add this line to your catch block? Don't count on that. Furthermore, there is a setting which is not very well known called implicit transactions. What this one does, if this one is on, every select, insert, delete, and update will start a transaction. Now, if you have only worked in SQL Server, this sounds like a very crazy and weird thing to do. But this is, in fact, the ANSI standard, and most database engine works that way. And there are situations where this can be turned on in SQL Server. And of course, you will not know. So again, that is a safeguard. If a transaction will start in your procedure, make sure that it's rolled back. You might also be that you're calling a procedure that starts a transaction, but for some reason, one or another, it fails to commit or roll it back. It could just be that it has begin transaction and the programmer forgot to do commit. But it could also be that it ran into these, for example, a non-existing table, compilation error at runtime, and was not able to catch it. So you need to cover up for that guy. And then you may ask, what if the caller started a transaction? Should I really roll back? Yes, you should, and we will talk about that later. And now let's look at how we should re-raise error. And there's 2 ways to go. You can use the custom procedure, or you can use the semicolon throw statement. Let's first look at how of using a custom procedure. So I've simplified my test table. The XML column is not there. And here I've got a procedure, error handler SP, which does not have try catch, because all it does is to raise an error, which we should not catch. But it starts with set exit board command count on, and then it collects all the components that are for an error message. There is the number of the error, the severity level, how bad it is, where 11s to 16 are user errors with actually no difference in severity, just weird code. From 17 and up, it's, well, 17 to 19 are various resource errors. State, we can just say is, well, Microsoft internal. It rarely tells us anything interesting. The procedure where it occurred, the line number, and the text of the message. Well, then this procedure looks at the text of the message. If it does not start with 3 stars, it forms an error message that starts with 3 stars, and then says adds the procedure name, if available, the line number, the error number, and the text of the message. It does not include the state and severity because it's using the raise error to re-raise the message, and raise error accepts severity and state as parameters. And we're also using a parameterized message, so the message is only %s, and then we pass the error message as a parameter. This is to avoid accidents with % characters in the messages. So then I got my inREST P, and then now look here, I got this statement here, set exit board command count on before begin try. And the reason it is before begin try is that this statement should be in every procedure. So it should not be in the try block, which is the main meat, which is the business logic. We don't want to see this line normally when we look at what the procedure does. The only time we want to see this line is if we are doing code review, and we expect it to be exactly here. And if it's not, we're going to call that out. Then we get begin try, in recipe starting, begin transaction in, well, insert that first row. This one has been simplified. Now the error is a different one. It's a really silly one. I got a character string, 13%. And then this row, commit transaction in case we come here. And now I got the proper catch block, if at a tran count greater than 0, rollback transaction, and I call my error handler SP. I got my auto procedure, same thing here, set X to board, command O cut on, starting, run in recipe, completed, and gain the same catch handler. And I'm running the in recipe normally, and then it's my same select as before. So I'm going to run this, and you can see starting message 50,000. I can't change this. This will always be the error number with Rationale when I'm raising user-defined message. But level 16, state 1, that actually comes from the error message. Procedure error handler SP, line 17, I can't change that. That will always be the procedure name and line number. But here I got the information. It was in the in recipe. It was line 12, error number 245. Conversion failed when converting the varchar value 13% to data type int. And no rows in the table. And if I just, for the fun of it, I go and change the run out recipe. You can see it is the same. I could, if I wanted to, I could have added a stack trace here. So I've seen actually which procedure that raised it, but I don't do that. And then I would actually have to pass the procedure name at a proc ID from the procedure. That's a little more over the top, I think. Now, there is one small problem with this. I'm using race error and execution continues. If every procedure in the system does it the same way, there's no problem. But you might be working in an old system with code that was written way back in the days of SQL 2000. I've worked with such a system. It has 8,000 procedures. It's been around since the beginning of the 90s. And although we've been using SQL 2005 or later for many years, there's not try catch in all procedures still. We just haven't come around to it. So there is a risk that the caller does not use try catch and then execution continue in the caller, which is bad. So we might think that it's better to use the semicolon throw statement to do this. Now, semicolon throw accept only a fixed error message. It cannot accept parameters. And it does not accept the severity. It's always 16. But I can put in, but it does accept an error number. So I can put in the severity into the error number and say, okay, just add this to 50,000. And it accepts the state, so I can reuse that one. And when I run this, I get a surprise. There is no text in the message. What's happened? Well, so semicolon throw does not accept parameters for the error message, but it still reacts on the percentage characters. Someone might have been in a hurry when they implemented that. I don't know. So you need to do this as well. Replace all percentages with double %. So now we got a proper error message and the percentage characters displayed. Okay, so there's another problem with this as well. I got this statement here, backup statement here, and when I run this on its own, you can see that it produces 2 error messages. 3201 cannot open backup device K, no such disk, .boc. Operating system error 3, the system cannot find the path specified. And then there is a companion message, 3013, saying backup database is terminating abnormally, just in case I didn't notice that things went wrong. So now what happens if I run this with my catch handler? Well, I only get text about one message, and unfortunately, it's the one that backup database is terminating abnormally. So no, I don't know why my backup failed. I only know that it failed. And the reason this happens is that, well, these functions, they are scalar, so they can only return information about one error, and it happens to be the second one. So this is not so good. A mitigating factor, though, is that most of the times I've seen these double error messages are with things that the DBA would do, like backup restore, alter table, etc., but not so much typically errors you get when running an application. Okay, let's now look at using the semicolon throw statement. So we have another script here. I don't have my error handler recipe anymore. I get, again, set exit board, command O cut on. And now, this is how my catch block looks like. If at a tran count greater than 0, rollback transaction, semicolon throw without arguments. This form of throw is only permitted between begin catch and end catch, and it will just re-raise the error. And my out recipe looks the same. So I'm going to run this. And you see, I get back the error message as if had been raised in the original place. Message 245, level 16, state 1, procedure in SP, line 12. Conversion failure, converting the varchar value 13% to data type int. No problem with the percentage character here. That's quite nice. And if I do run the outer SP, so it's being re-raised a second time, there is no difference. And if I try this backup statement, this is also very nice because now I get back both error messages, so I know why my backup failed. So this might seem that the semicolon throw is a lot better, but there are problems with this as well. And you might guess, because I'm calling this command this very awkward name, semicolon throw. So what's the story here? Well, the story is this, that originally when Sybase designed SQL Server way back in the 80s, they thought that semicolons is for webs. So they did not have any semicolons in their language. But semicolon is part of the ANSI standard for SQL. So Microsoft, at some point, I think it was SQL 7, added semicolon as terminators, optional terminators. It's now they have deprecated not using semicolon. It's deprecated. So they could in some version just require semicolons and my code will crash. But I don't count on that happening any soon now. They at least will have to introduce an option to make semicolons mandatory. So, and you might see I have semicolons in a few places, but not everywhere. But why this then? Why like this? Why not then put the semicolon here? That would be the normal thing to do. Why not? Well, you know, it's quite easy when you're fooling around there that you might by just mistake pressing delete and the semicolon is gone. Okay, you might say, but now this is a syntax error. So what's the problem? Well, look here. Starting. No rows in the table. No error message. No completed. But absolutely no error message. What happened? Well, let's see. We comment out this backup statement to give you some hint. Now there is an error message, but very weird one. Cannot rollback throw. No transactional save point of that name was found. What is going on? Well, this is the scoop. This here is legal syntax, and what it actually means we will see a little later. So this is why, because it's so easy to lose a semicolon up here, we needed to have it here, so it's very visible. We can see it, semicolon throw. Think of the command as semicolon throw. So to the extent, if you see this, you should, oh, God, you get very nervous. Please put back the semicolon. It's just like someone doing something really, really, really bad. So this is where I have to do it. Another P colleague of mine told me that he had devised a template for his developers, and he put the semicolon up here. But then at some point, well, the semicolon has disappeared, and there are lots of procedures. Well, with this correct syntax, we did not do the expected thing. So why would you use a custom procedure to re-raise the error? Well, you might still be in SQL 2005, 2008, and in that case, you have no choice because semicolon throw was introduced in SQL 2012. But it could also be that you want to log the error or do some other custom behavior. In the system I've been working with for many years, we actually do this. If an error occurs, we catch this, and then we log that to a table so we can see what errors have occurred in our application, because maybe there's something is crashing and we don't see it elsewhere. And it avoids the semicolon trap if that one makes you really nervous. But semicolon throw also has its advantages. It's simple. I mean, you don't have to write an extra procedure. You just put it in and you're done. And you get back all error messages preserved as is, which is, of course, also very great. And you also make sure that execution is aborted. This form of semicolon throw also always aborts the batch. But we could, as you saw, we could do this. The last thing we could achieve with the custom procedure as well. So then you may ask now, but if I have try catch, do I really need exec abort on? Yes, you need, because as we have seen, try catch does not catch all errors. So some might still slip through the cracks that way, but they could be handled by thanks to exec abort on. And also we have these attention signals, timeout expired. That's why we need exec abort on. So we need both try catch and exec abort on in our application code. Now let's look a little bit about client-side error handling. If the client makes a call to SQL Server, it must check for errors, either by exception handling or looking at return codes, depending on the API. And in case of an error, the client must always respond with if at a tran count greater than 0, rollback transaction. There is one exception though, and that is if you have started a transaction through transaction object in the client side, then you should use that. But else, always make sure that you respond to an unexpected error by rolling back the transaction. Don't rely on the SQL code having exactly more done. Each component should do its job, and in SQL Server, this means that each component should always be prepared to cover up for the other guy, because yes, that's the way things are in SQL Server. And then there's one more thing to say about the client. Make sure that you get all result sets. So I'm going to demo what I mean with this. I'm going to show you by this C# program. So here I got a select statement. This statement is designed to return a number of rows and then produce an error, because max length is -1 and log -1 is illegal. And as you see, there's a try catch, but it has been commented out. And then I got my main procedure. I create a connection, I create a command, I start a data reader, I just count my rows. Then I'm thinking, hey, my batch is only producing one result set, so I don't need next result. So it has been commented out. And then I just print the number of rows red. I got a catch handler, and yes, in case of an error, I submit if at a tran count greater than 0, row back transaction. And then I print out what error that occurred. I will combine and run this. And it says error and an invalid floating point operation occurred. Oh well, now I will go and activate that catch block. Now this might seem a little odd thing to do. Normally you wouldn't submit a code like this from a client, but just imagine that you're actually calling a stored procedure, and that stored procedure maybe have lots of code coming down here and returning the data from some table. So it makes perfect sense to have try catch. Now I'm going to run this again. 60 rows red. The exception was gone. So imagine again, the user sees this. Well, wait a minute. Our business is not doing well. We need to do some cuts. We should outsource the IT department. And you lose your job again. And why does this happen? Well, because originally, when we did not have try catch, the error came as part of the result set. But now, because it's a different statement, the way things work on the TDS stack, it is now being sort of waiting until we get the next result set. So I call that next result. And now when I do this, again, I get the error message. So this is the virtue of getting all result sets. Always do next result so you make sure that you get all errors. And now just a quick summary of the various options in ADO.NET. So execute reader, always use next results to get through all result sets. It costs very, very little if you're going to ignore the data, just get through the result sets. You don't have to consume the rows. Execute scalar, well, under the covers, it only gets the first result set. So with this example, it would not raise the error. But then again, you would only use execute scalar to get one single value. So there should not be any errors occurring after that one. So it's not really an issue, I think. Execute non-query, it's not a problem. It does not return you in the data to you, but it will get all result sets and it will get all errors under the covers. So any error that occurs will be erased. If you do a data adapter fill with a data set, the same thing, it will get all the result sets to fill the data set. But this is the one to watch out for, a data adapter fill with a data table. It only gets the first result set and errors can be missed. So try to avoid from this one. And I'm seeing here that I'm actually reaching the end of the allotted time, but I was told that I can run over because I told them my session was 60 minutes. So I hope you can bear with me for another 10 minutes or so. And of course the Q&A. So yeah. To avoid this, if you don't do client program yourself, this is good to bring home to developers. Avoid data fill with a data table because under the covers, it will only get one result set. Of course, they did it wrong in .NET. They should get all the result sets and just discard them. But, oh well, the last thing I'm going to talk about is nested transactions. And I put this in quote because, well, there are not really any nested transactions. But you can do this. You can say begin transaction, and that starts the transaction. Then you can say begin transaction again, but all that happens is that at a tran count is incremented. And then you can say commit transaction, but nothing is committed. All that happens is that at a tran count is decremented by 1. But when you say commit transaction again and it comes down to 0, now this is where transaction is committed and all other users can see the changed updated data. Now rollback transaction, where does this one come into the picture? Well, it doesn't matter if you do it here, here, or here. It will always roll back everything. Now let's think about nested procedures. So we touched on this earlier, but so we have this. We have an outer procedure that starts a transaction. And then it calls an inner procedure that also starts a transaction. Now we ask ourselves, should the catch handler of the inner SP roll back everything? I mean, what if the outer procedure wants to do a plan B or just log our error and continue with something else? Because it know that we could produce an error and it has an idea about it. And ideally, no, we should not roll it back. However, we are not using Postgres. We are not using Oracle. We are not using DB2. We are using SQL Server, and we have no choice. We need to roll back because there is no better way. The inner procedure has failed to fulfill its contract, so continuing out of the question. And there's no way we can do this in a civilized way to save the transaction of the outer procedure. So of two bad options, we have to pick the least bad one. That is roll back everything. Now, someone might be thinking, wait a minute, I heard about save points. Yes, I need to talk about save points. Yes, you can do this in SQL Server. You can say begin transaction my tran, do the first part, then you can say save transaction my save, do the second part, and now you can say roll back transaction my save. And now this will roll back the second part, so you're back to this situation. My tran, the first part, can still be committed. And by the way, yes, the name of that save point can be throw. So that's why that is legal syntax. I suggested to Microsoft that they should actually put in a check and say, no, this is actually legal. No, that was not on the question. That was just, no. A completely criminal design, if you ask me. Anyway, so you might think now, well, wait a minute. Doesn't that fit in well what we talked about on the previous slide? Isn't that useful? No, save points are useless. Why? Well, first of all, you cannot roll back to a save point when the transaction is doomed. And I told you to run with exactly board on, and in that case, the transaction is always doomed. But even if it was off, well, rollback is only possible for some errors. And keep in mind, we are talking about unexpected errors. Yes, if you know that if certain particular error occurs, you want to roll back to that save point for whatever reasons. That's okay. If it's an expected error and you know that is one you can handle and will permit you to do a rollback. But for unexpected errors, as a general principle, just forget it because it only works for some errors. And furthermore, if you would try to do this, you would have to capture at a tran count when entering the procedure and add a lot more code. It would make your error handling too complex for something that would only work on Wednesdays and Sundays. And there's one more thing as well. Save points are not supported in distributed transactions. Then you may say, I'm not using distributed transactions. And I'm telling you, you don't know. Someone might get the idea of calling your procedure in the distributed transactions tomorrow or 3 years from now from a completely different systems. That's nothing you can check for as well. And let me tell you this. I think I've used save points maybe 2, maybe 3 times in my career. And one of the situations was, oh yeah, I should do some better error handling. Yeah, I tried to save the incoming transaction and do this, etc. And guess what? That procedure was called in a distributed transaction. And it was nasty because the error message we actually saw in the system that occurred to this was just, well, it was nonsense. We have no idea that was wrong. We had to use Profiler to find the error. And that was exactly the save point. So I'm getting to the end. Just to make a summary of what we have seen. The first thing, which is not really on the slide, but error handling in SQL Server is very inconsistent. And that's why I had to write 250 pages about it. But keep this in mind. You should always communicate unexpected errors. Never lure users to see that they see correct data. They must know that things have gone wrong. And the means to do this is to re-raise the error and get all result sets. Always abort execution on unexpected errors. Never go and persist incorrect or incomplete data. Set execute abort on. If at a tran count greater than 0, roll back transaction and re-raise the error. Prevent orphan transactions. I've said this again and again. They are nasty. Believe me, I've been there. I've seen people sending me outputs so I can see, yeah, they get orphan transaction, and it's just been a horrible situation. Set execute abort on. If at a tran count greater than 0, also in the client code. And also this, don't lose the original error message. Without it, troubleshooting is very difficult. Believe me, I've been through this more than once in my career, just getting a message, what is this? And it's been digging, and eventually finding the original error message to find it Oh, yeah, of course. It was obvious. And we saw some example of this. We had the throw, we did where we did not replace the percentage characters blank, or we have the semicolon throw, or we re-race with a custom procedure and lose the reason why the backup failed. So, and one thing here, keep things simple. Don't try to do fancy error handling, because I've seen more than one example in my professional career where the error has been in the error handler. That is not what you want in error. Your error handling should be simple, straightforward, well tested, and robust. And particularly in SQL Server. And watch out for the semicolon trap. So this was all from me. Of course, I will hang around for the Q&A. Just to, repeat here, my name is Erland Sommarskog. Here's my email address, sql.sommarskog.se. Please, if you have questions which you did not get answered during the Q&A or occurs to you later, please feel free to contact me. You find slides and scripts for this presentation on the Data Platform Geek site. And there's also my website, sommarskog.se/present. And if you want to read the full article on error handling, or at least start, well, here's the link to the first part. The first part 1 is actually quite short. 12 pages just gives you a recipe how to write error handling without going into details. Part 2 is like 80 pages, and it has some of these nasty things that can happen with error handling, and a lot more details, various, a lot of weird things. Can be confusing at times. Part 3 is even longer, 100 pages, but that's a lot of code example of these. I got a quite long example of how to do error handling, for example, and also custom error handling, which can be interesting. And the appendixes, there are 3 of them, one for linked service, one for the CLR, one for the service broker of different nature. The service broker is more, if you're writing a service broker applications, so that's also an example. The one which is really confusing is the one on linked service. That's hilarious how confusing it can be. Okay, so that was for me. I don't think the host wanted to take over and say a few things before we go to the Q&A. So see if I can find my meetings controls. Yeah, there's the one I need to do. Stop share.
Yeah, thank you, Erland. I'll just take a couple of minutes, and I thank you for this wonderful webinar. I think it's a lot of stuff for people to digest there, and you have given a good pointers also to follow up. Let me share my screen. Yes. Yeah, so we'll take Q&A in just a couple of minutes. And if you have still more questions, then you can also use our social channels to post your questions. bit.ly/DPG social. The link is available in chat window also. And a quick word from our knowledge partners for today, SQL Maestro. SQL Maestro offers a lot of advanced video courses on SQL Server performance tuning, T-SQL querying, and programming. All these 3 video courses are live now, and to support community during these tough times, SQL Maestro is also offering discounts. So it is right now 50% discount is going on, so that you can just go ahead and grab the opportunity right away. And all these 3 courses were recorded by Amit Bansal, who is a Microsoft certified master and data platform MVP from last 12 years. And the best part of subscribing to video course is that you can access this course anytime, anywhere, and as many times as you can. And the best part of SQL Maestro's video courses is that it gives you the live feeling. All the videos are recorded in a HD format in a live studio, a very good studio. So you'll get that live feel when you are watching and going to the videos. If you wish to learn more about SQL Maestro's video courses, just go to that bit.ly link, bit.ly/SQL Maestros VC, or else you can simply go to sqlmaestros.com. You can simply drop an email to contact@sqlmaestros.com with your number or whatever details, so that our SQL Maestros team can contact you back. And SQL Maestros also offer hands-on lab solution, which is unique in internet. There is nothing like this exist over internet. So hands-on lab is a document. You will be provided with a document on any particular technology topic. If you go through the topic, there are scripts and supporting explanations, observations, screenshots, important notes, etc. So that at the end of the document, you will be able to become expert in that particular topic. So right now there are hands-on labs for a lot of technologies, SQL Server, Power BI, Azure, etc. You can go and explore all of them. And SQL Maestros is supporting community with 75% discount. So this is the best opportunity for you to learn, go and grab all these labs and then learn further. So just visit sqlmaestros.com to learn more about hands-on labs project also. And we are coming up with more free events from Data Platform Geeks. You can see upcoming webinars lined up there. Query diagnostics in Power BI by Microsoft team, product team itself, by Colin and George. They're taking session on query diagnostics Power BI, and Amit Bansal is also taking session on how to troubleshoot a slow running query in SQL Server. I hope you're all our SQL Server audience. You're never going to miss this particular session. Go to dataplatformgeeks.com and register for all these upcoming sessions. And we are also coming up with virtual symposiums, a series of symposiums. But to start with, the upcoming one is SQL Server 2019 Virtual Symposium. It's going to be a 2-day event. Everything is free. You just need to go to dataplatformgeeks.com, register as a member, and you just click to attend so that you will get registered for that event. Yes, our Erland is also taking session on SQL Server tidbits there. It's going to be a wonderful session there again, and we hope you will never going to miss that particular session. And we request you again to spread the word. This particular message is available in chat window. Please share this message in your social channels, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, everywhere, wherever you have social presence, so that your colleagues and friends can also benefit from all this free stuff. And we also have put up a thank you note for Erland in our LinkedIn and Facebook channels. The links are available in chat window. We request all of you to go there and then put up your comments. That will really encourage our speakers to come back and deliver free sessions for the community. This is the time to thank our speakers, because during these tough times, they are helping our community members to grow in their career. So your feedback really matters. So the link is available in chat window again, the LinkedIn and Facebook link. Please click on that right away and put up your comments there. And thank you all for joining. And I'll hand it over back to Erland to take Q&A.
Yeah, so I see one question in the Q&A window, or I see one in the chat window. I think that I can start with one that was asked in the chat window, but that has already basically been answered. That one in the chat window. So I see someone is asking about why I'm using, error handling uses raise error, not throw. And well, as you saw, I use both. I think the one we use at one of my clients, where I've taken this pattern, we used raise error for a long time. We have actually changed it now to throw, exactly for the reason that throw aborts the batch. But I wanted to show you sort of both things, way the risks if you're using semicolon throw to re-raise. But basically that one is better, because then you know that the batch is aborted and you have rolled back the transaction. So that's a good way to do it. And then there is a question about in the Q&A window. Maybe I should say answer live. Yeah, press that one. So about the use of the exact state in try catch block. Yeah, so the exact state function, for those who does not know about it, it checks the state of the transaction. It can return 1, 0, or -1. And 1 means that the transaction is active and committable. 0 means there is no transaction, and -1 means that the transaction is doomed. And yes, if you would, for some reason, you would like to do some sort of repair or some sort of, if it's possible, I like to continue, you can check exact state. I do not cover this because I think that those situations are not very common. So I don't think it's very, you can use it, but it's not it's not very important. So there was one of these things. I mean, I could say a lot of things. I can show you crazy things, like actually sometimes there's errors that not can be caught. I got a demo somewhere of an error that's only exhibited if you have try catch, which does not show if you do not have try catch. As a matter of fact, let's see if I can. No, well, he's sharing his screen. Yeah, then let's see. Just for the fun of it, for those who are around, see if I can find this one here in my management studio. I'm going to stop the presentation. So this error handling SQL Server is just so funny. They got so many weird things. Let's see the extra error. Yeah, so this, if I run this on its own, you can see executing SQL directly, no cursor, but no error message. And then I'm going to try catch, which just re-raises the error. And now there's an error message. Incorrect syntax near the keyword declare. Sometimes you are wondering, how are they doing this? Now, I should tell you, this is one thing that you would normally only submit from a client API. It's nothing you use directly. It's the client API that uses this. So they apparently trying to build a cursor from this code, and it doesn't work out. So that's why they got this syntax error. But normally they suppress it. But when you have to try catch, this is just, yes, crazy. Oh, well, have we any more questions? I would, yes. Try catch and use a defined function. No, if memory serves. We cannot use. So if you have a user-defined function, you will have to catch it in the calling procedure, but you cannot use try catch inside a UDF because they got very limited what you can do in UDF. I think you can't even. I don't think you can raise errors either, as an explicit throw of raise error. Oh, and I should press answer live, maybe. Any more questions?
Yeah, it looks like we do not have any more questions, Erland, and we thank you very, very much for this wonderful webinar, and see you soon in virtual symposium again.